In Luke chapter 13 and verse 23, Jesus is asked a very simple but probably misguided question when someone asks him, "Are there few that be saved?" As interesting as that question might be, Jesus doesn't answer it in this context because how many will be saved is not as important as how men will be saved. And that's the question that Jesus answers in Luke chapter 13, verse 24 and following. I want to analyze for just a few moments in this particular video the word strive that Jesus says in verse 24. Strive to enter in by the straight gate. It is in the Greek a present tense verb which means continuous action. This is something that we must always be doing. It is not a one-time act. It is a continual act. We must always be striving. It is in the Greek in the imperative mood, which is a mood of command. In other words, Jesus commands that we always be doing this. The word itself is a form of the Greek word agonizomai. You might hear in that particular word the English word agonize. That is exactly where our English word agony and agonize come from. In the Greek, it basically has a meaning of fighting or contention or labor diligently, fervently. It was used in the Grecian games of those who strove to win the crown with all the effort that they could put forth. It is a word that tells us that we must be diligent about our salvation. We must be active. We must be earnest. We must make it our first business in life, the chiefest aim of our life, to get to heaven, to strive, to labor, to contend, to fight to get there. Now the question is, do you agonize about your salvation? Is your salvation the most important consideration of your life, or is it like the one who asked, perhaps a matter of idle curiosity? How many people are so intense, so earnest about getting to heaven that it is truly the most pressing matter and most pressing concern of their lives, that they literally agonize against sin, fight, labor fervently to get there? If Jesus is correct here, and of course he is, it becomes quite apparent why most people will be lost. How many people, how many of us really make getting to heaven the number one priority in our life, seeking first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness? How many of us are so intense about their souls that they agonize over their sinful condition, agonize so much that they must do something about it immediately? You see, folks, sin is very easy, and the Bible warns us that it is. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 1 speaks of the sin that doth so easily beset us. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 25 tells us of the pleasures of sin. If sin wasn't pleasurable, people wouldn't do it. Sin's easy. All you have to do to sin is just let yourself go. Quit trying to live righteously. Just collapse. To be a faithful Christian requires self-discipline, self-control, resistance to the pleasures of the flesh, the demands that our bodies make for enjoyment, that desire that we have to do what we want to do rather than to exercise ourselves unto godliness. 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 7. What's easier, studying your Bible or watching television? Which would your fleshly nature rather do? The easy or the hard? Which is simpler, sleeping in on Sunday morning or getting up and getting dressed and going to Bible study and worship? Praying or reading our favorite magazine? Going to the movies or going to visit the sick at the hospital? Which tastes better, ice cream or asparagus? Which is easier? Practicing self-discipline to do what you know is right, to do what you know you ought to do, or letting yourself go and do what you'd prefer? Don't let anybody tell you that Christianity is easy. We are to strive, we are to fight, we are to contend, we are to labor diligently to enter in by the narrow gate. Most people don't want to do that, so they find a multitude of reasons to salve their conscience and go their merry way, following the multitude to do evil. Going up the mountain is what's hard. Going down is simple. Jesus in Luke 13 and verse 24 spoke a brilliant, simple psychological truth. It's not easy to go to heaven. It takes effort, it takes sacrifice, it takes diligence, it takes agony, a price most people are not willing to pay. And that's why Jesus, when he does answer the question, are there few that be saved, in Matthew chapter 7 verses 13 and 14, says, yes, few will enter in by the narrow gate.